for the test one he gave us, or?
Okay, that didn't take long. When I went back, I signed out, and then when I went to sign back in, this time it had the other one. So yeah, I should now be able to share screen. Let's just hope. Fingers crossed. Share. Yeah. All right. Yes, I can share screen. Okay. So, that one down and get back into bright space here. And our class. So, the test you can start anytime after class tonight, and I do give you. I think I gave you like 90 or 100 minutes on the multiple choice, and then I gave you another like 120 minutes, I believe, for the problems. So time should really not be an issue unless a person is completely unprepared. Time should not be an issue at all in doing the test. So you can start it as soon as class is over tonight. Again, you would go under the assessments tab and then under quizzes, okay? Or you can start it whenever, but just remember there is a time limit once you start, and I do have it due then by to be submitted by 11:59 p.m. Saturday. So don't start after any later than 8 or 9 o'clock Saturday night. You get it all done. So again, it's up to you. Do it tonight. Do it anytime tomorrow evening, anytime Saturday or Saturday. So you've got lots of options on that. Oh, one thing I do want to mention on the test, on the problems, the data did not line up very well. So there's numbers that are going like all over the place. They are accurate on a line by line basis, but like I say, it's just they're not all centered where they should be. And I tried to fix it and couldn't figure out how to fix it. So just realize on most of the problem, well, there's 4 problems, and on at least 3 of those problems, again, the data is correct line by line. The problem is that the data just doesn't line up very well. It's, in terms of like, it's not in a straight line, like 2 different years of data for the balance sheet. It'd be nice if they were both in straight lines all the way down, and they're like just kind of back and forth all over the place. But line by line, it is correct. Okay, so did that make sense what I'm talking about there? Maybe I could show you real quick. Okay, because you already knew what to expect for the problems. So here we go. Test 1 problems. And I'll hit preview. Okay. And instructions, and I'll hit start quiz, and you'll see how this shows up here. See, so the data, let me move you over here. Oops, that shouldn't have shown up like that. That wasn't the way it, uh-oh. Well, that's a bigger problem than I thought. I thought it was just like this, where the numbers just aren't nice and straight. That's a bigger issue than that. And
let's just cancel it.
well, problem 2, okay, you can see the numbers don't all line up on problem 2, but problem 2 isn't going to, even though they don't line up nice and pretty, that looks okay. I mean, you'll be able to figure it out. Yeah, it's 1 million minus 400,000 minus 300,000. Okay, this one lined up pretty well. And then they're up. This one did not line up. Well, I guess it lines up okay. Except, no, I didn't. Problem 4 didn't line up very well either. All right, do them, don't do, you can do them as 2 separate times. So you, in other words, you can do the multiple choice test tonight if you want to, and then do the problems tomorrow if you want to, because I set them up as 2 different tests. Why don't, let's do this. Why don't I go back in, edit the problems? I'm going to exit this preview. I'm going to have to go back in and just redo a couple of those problems. So the problems, let's just plan to have those available tomorrow instead of tonight. I'll get them edited tonight, and then yeah, it'll be available like in the morning. So I will make the problems available as soon as I get it done. I'll get it done tonight, but it may be, who knows, it could be 9, 10 o'clock tonight before I get it all figured out, get it edited to where it makes sense. So, but multiple choice is fine. The only thing I noticed on the multiple choice is a lot of the questions, the answers will all have an A in front of them on a lot of them. And again, the only thing I could figure out to get rid of that was just keep going back and backspacing each line by line on that. I'm like, oh, that's going to take forever. So just know there's a lot of multiple choice questions that have the letter A, and the answers all have the letter A in front of them. Some of them don't have the letter A, don't have any letters in front of them. Most of the answers all have a letter A in front of it. Just ignore the letter. Okay. Are you guys, all right, good. I saw Ishmael move, so I was worried you guys might be frozen there for a second. I thought, oh no, now what? Now I'm going to lose. Now it's going to close down on me. Okay, so like I'm not having enough technology issues. All right, let's go to the content then. So again, if you're going to do the test tonight, just do the multiple choice portion tonight because I've got to fix those. All right. Okay, so under content now, I wanted to look at the worksheet for the test. Let me download that. And the solutions to the worksheet. Let me download each of those as well, because I have one set of solutions without details, and then another set of solutions, solutions to the worksheets. Okay, solutions to test worksheet test 1, download that. Okay, and finally, the one other thing I need to download for now, whoops, to the solutions to the worksheets. And here's the detailed solutions. Here, so let me get that downloaded, and then we'll be all set to cover the worksheet. Okay. All right. So let's just start with the worksheet itself. So and again, this worksheet kind of takes you through the types of problems then that are on the problem section of the test. you know, which again, I'll be fixing later tonight. But anyhow, now, this first problem, remember, is on ratios. That one, I don't have a problem on the test on ratios, but I have several multiple choice questions on the ratio. So, first of all, we've got the balance sheet and income statement for this Gunderson Manufacturing. And then, so we have all that information. We have a little additional information in terms of their lease expense. And then we have various ratios for the industry. And then we're asked to compute all the ratios there for Gunderson as well, and then kind of compare them to the industry and whatnot. And then we have a second follow-up question here on our profitability ratios, excuse me, that involves the DuPont analysis. So, all right, let's take a look then. So current ratio, quick ratio, etc. So if we look at the solutions here, the current ratio is just the current assets divided by current liabilities. All the ratios were fairly easy to calculate. I mean, it's just a matter of following the formula, right? So, you know, I'll do the first couple, and then I'll do one other one because, or a couple other ones. The fixed charge coverage tends to confuse people a little bit, so we'll hit that too. But going back to the worksheet then, and actually, yeah, okay, so back to the worksheet. The current ratio, remember, is current assets, which in this case is $310,000, divided by current liabilities, which in this case is $160,000. So 310 divided by 160,000 gives you a current ratio of 1.93 times. By the way, notice the vast majority of these ratios, your answer is a times, is in time, okay? Only a few of them have percent answers. There's one thing I found in the past, students just automatically always want to throw a percent after every ratio they calculate, but this would not be 1.93%. Your current assets are 1.93 times as much as your current liability. Okay, the quick ratio is, remember, we take the current assets less inventory divided by current liabilities. Well, if you take that 120,000 in inventory and subtract that from the 310,000 in total current assets, you're going to get what, 190,000, right? Because 20 would be 2. Yeah, you're going to get 190,000. Divide that by your current liabilities of 160,000, and that's going to give you that quick ratio of 1.19 times. Okay, so again, it's just a matter of following the formulas to get the numbers. So those were the two liquidity ratios. Let's just compare those to the industry. So we got 1.93 and 1.19. Well, looking back here at the industry, 1.93 means the current ratio is slightly less than the industry's average of 2 times, but not a big enough difference to worry about. And on the quick ratio, they're actually, Gunderson's doing quite a bit better than the industry because they have 1.19 times for the quick ratio versus that industry average of 1 time even. So we'd say as far as liquidity goes, they look good relative to the industry. Again, current ratio just slightly lower. Quick ratio is quite a bit higher than the industry average. So they look good on liquidity. And then we'll get into the asset utilization ratios here, beginning with receivables turnover, which is sales divided by accounts receivable. So that's 10 times. And again, if we go over here, go back to the worksheet itself, okay, sales were $1 million, accounts receivable was $100,000. So $1 million divided by 100,000 is where we get that receivables turnover ratio of 10 times. Now, the average collection period, the next one, remember what we do there is we take average daily credit sales, which would be $1 million divided by, if you use what's in the book, it's a 360-day year. Somebody did alert me that on an Accepi problem for the average collection period, they use a 365-day year, even though our book uses a 360-day. As far as the test goes, either way you go, it's not gonna, you won't have to worry about missing any points because you use a 360-day instead of a 365-day year or vice versa. But I did want to alert you that a student let me know that on one of the Accepi homework problems, it does use a 365-day year, even though our book in my formula sheet uses a 360-day. So you divide $1 million by 360, whatever that gives you. You then divide, as your average daily credit sales, divide the $100,000 accounts receivable balance by that figure, and you should get 36 days even as your average collection. What is the average daily credit sales? Let me run it on my calculator quick. Million divided by 360, I get $2,777.78, okay, as the average daily credit sales. So then if I divide 100,000 by that, yeah, anyhow, I'm gonna get 36, okay, average collection. So, in terms of receivables turnover and average collection period, how do we fare relative to the industry? Again, it's 10 times in 36 days. The industry average is 7.3 times. By the way, since the receivables turnover ratio is lower for the industry than ours, because ours was 10 times, that has to mean that the industry, and it has to mean the industry is going to have a higher average collection period, because those two are inversely related. The higher the receivables turnover, the lower the average collection period. So since our receivables turnover ratio was higher than that, our average collection period has to be lower than 50 days. It has to be well, and it was 36 days. Okay, next is inventory turnover, which is sales divided by, sales divided by inventory. So if we go back up here, again, total sales were $1 million. Inventory was $120,000. You divide $1 million by 120,000, and when you do that, you're going to get an inventory turnover ratio of 8.33 times, which compares with the industry average of 3 times. We have a way higher inventory turnover ratio than the industry, and that's a good thing, remember. Why? Because if our inventory turnover ratio is too low, what did we say that means? Not that we don't have enough sales. I mean, certainly we'd always like to have more sales, but if we don't look at the numerator and instead look at the denominator, if the inventory turnover is too low, what does it tell us? Anybody? Okay, let's go to the
not selling your products fast enough.
Well, but again, that would be using the numerator sales. So if we assume we're already trying to do what we can to generate sales.
then you have too much inventory.
Then we got too much inventory, exactly. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because if you have too much inventory, that's excess funds tied up in that inventory that you could be earning interest on. It also means that you're going to have more theft and spoilage costs and more storage and handling costs because of that extra inventory. So it's a good thing that their inventory turnover ratio is way higher than the industry. As long as they're not stocking out of goods, and that you don't want to run out, because if you run out, what's the customer going to do? They're going to go to one of your competitors to buy the product. So as long as they're not running out of goods, the fact that they have a significantly higher inventory turnover ratio is a good thing. Fixed asset turnover, remember, is sales over fixed assets. So we take our sales of $1 million there, divided by net plant and equipment of 490,000. That's going to give us just over 2. 2.04 times is the fixed asset turnover ratio. Now, we compare that to the industry. Their fixed asset turnover was 1.9 times. So we are turning over fixed assets better than the industry. I think I also told you of all the ratios they list, that one's probably the one that I place the least amount of meaning on. Not that it doesn't mean anything, and there are times I've, in analyzing a company, I've looked at, well, okay, what's going on then? Well, maybe it's a fixed asset turnover. So it can have some meaning, but of all of them they've listed, that's probably the least helpful. Total asset turnover, which is sales over total assets. So again, take your sales of $1 million, divide that by the total assets down here of 800,000. $1 million divided by 800,000 is going to give us 1.25 times as a total asset turnover ratio. And if we compare that to the industry, ours is 1.25. The industry total asset turnover is 1.8 times. So we are not turning our assets over with sales nearly as much as the rest of the industry. So we're not selling in the same kind of volume, relatively speaking, as the industry. Okay. And that's important because remember, the total asset turnover ratio also affects one of your profitability ratios. Which one is it again? Anyone remember? Let's go back. Full view here. Whoop. Okay. What profitability ratio is affected by asset turnover? Tom? Remember? Well, we had 3 profitability ratios we looked at: the net profit margin, return on assets, return on equity. So total asset turnover ratio affects which one of those directly?
Return on assets.
Yeah, it's return on assets. Because remember, in the DuPont formula, and this will be good to remember for the multiple choice questions, in the DuPont formula, you can multiply the profit margin by the asset turnover ratio, compute your return on assets. Okay, and so the higher if you hold everything else constant, the higher the total asset turnover ratio, the higher your return on assets. All right. View, and then let's see, after so our total asset turnover quite a bit less than theirs. Debt to total assets. That's total liabilities divided by total assets. Well, looking at the balance sheet, your total liabilities are 400,000. If we divide that by total assets of 800,000, 400,000 over 800,000, of course, gives us 50% as the debt to total asset ratio. Now, we compare that with the industry. Their debt to total asset ratio was 40%. So we are more leveraged than the industry. Industry uses finances 40% of their assets with debt. We finance 50% of our assets. So we being Gunders. So they're a bit more leverage in the industry, you know, which means they're taking on a little more financial risk by having more debt. Because remember, debt is your cheapest form of financing, but it's also your most risky form. The leverage ratio, we didn't cover that in class, so in fact, I'm just gonna back out one right out of there. There. Okay. Now, times interest earned. Remember, that's EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, divided by interest expense. Well, we see up here in the income statement, EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, is 300,000. Interest expense is 150,000. So 300 over 150,000 gives us 2 times as the times interest earned ratio. And if we go back to see what the industry average was, theirs was also 2 times. So we're covering, even though we do have more debt as a percent of assets in the industry, we're still covering it equally as well as the industry in terms of the times interest earned ratio, because our operating profit is double our interest expense, and the same is true for the industry. Now, the fixed charge coverage, that one, remember what we got to do on that one is it's earnings before fixed charges and taxes divided by fixed charges. So what do we mean by fixed charges? Interest expense is one of your fixed charges. The other one is lease expense. Because lease expenses is also a legal obligation. It's got to be paid. It's a contractual obligation. You know, so to find earnings before fixed charges and taxes, we take earnings before interest and taxes, with, remember, interest being one of those fixed charges. That's 300,000. And then we have to add back in any lease expense. Well, if you go down to additional information, they said there's 10,000 of annual lease expense. So earnings before fixed charges and taxes would be 310,000. That's your earnings before interest and lease expense back, 310,000. Divide that by total fixed charges, which is the interest expense of 150,000 plus the 10,000 in lease expense, giving you a total of 160,000. So take 310 over 160,000, and our fixed charge coverage ratio is 1.94 times, which compared to the industry average of 1.9 times, we're slightly above the industry average on the fixed charge coverage ratio. We're the same on the times interest earned ratio. So even though, yes, we do have more debt relative to our assets, we're still covering our interest expense and our fixed charges as well as the rest of the industry. Okay, then we get to the profitability ratios. The net profit margin, remember, is net income over sales. So if we go back to the income statement here, net income was 100,000, sales were $1 million. So net income over sales is 10%. That compares to a net profit margin for the industry of only 8%. So that's good. We are converting a larger percent of our sales to profit than the industry, where ours is 10%, the industry average is 8%. So that's good. Next, we have return on assets, which is net income over total assets. Well, again, net income is $100,000. Total assets is 800,000. So 100,000 divided by 800,000 gives us, that's 1/8 or 12.5% as our return on assets. And by the way, note that that same number could have been computed by taking the profit margin of 10% and multiplying that by the total asset turnover ratio of 1.25 times. 1.25 times 10% is 12.5%. Now, that compares with the industry average return on assets of 14.4%. We're not doing quite as well as the industry when it comes to return on assets. We did have a higher profit margin than the industry, but remember, we had a significantly lower total asset turnover ratio. That's the reason our return on assets is lower than the industry. Finally, return on equity. That's net income divided by stockholders' equity. So again, your net income from the income statement there is 100,000. Stockholders' equity from the balance sheet is 400,000. 100,000 over 400,000 is, of course, going to give us 1/4 or 25% as the return on equity. And the industry average for that is 24%. So even though our return on assets was lower than the industry, ours was 12.5%. The industry's return on assets was 14.4%. Our return on equity slightly exceeds the industry because we have 25%. The industry return on equity is 24%. You guys explain to me, how is it possible for us to have a lower return on assets than the industry, but a higher return on equity? And there's only one way that's possible. And how is that?
Because our ratio of assets to equity is apparently different from what the standards are.
Yeah. So in other words, remember, assets equal liabilities plus stockholders' equity. So the debt to asset ratio has an impact on the return on equity. Remember, the DuPont formula says you can take the return on assets and divide that by 1 minus the debt to equity ratio to get your return on equity. So in our case, here, if you took the return on assets of 12.5%, divided that by 1 minus the debt to asset ratio of 50%, well, 1 minus that tells us that equity finances the other 50% of our assets. So 50% are financed with debt. 1 minus that means 50% are also financed with equity. So when you divide 12.5% by 1 minus 50% or 0.50, you're going to get a return on equity of 25%. So again, even though, and this is important for the multiple choice questions, even though Gunderson had a lower return on assets than the industry. They ended up with a higher return on equity, at least a slightly higher return on equity, because they had a higher debt to total asset. And that's also explained here in the questions. Why did they have a lower return on assets, even though they had a higher profit margin? Because Gunderson had a lower asset turnover. Why did they have a higher return on equity, even though they had a lower return on assets? Because they had a higher debt to asset rate. So, any questions on the ratios or the conclusions we reached? Any questions from anybody? No? All right. Michelle, you got a question?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Tracy, you got a question?
I'm okay, I think.
Okay, all right. You're the only two I can't see, so that's why I got it. Once in a
I
while.
think it's my laptop. I try to do just video, and I don't know, maybe I have to I've never had video on my laptop, so I'm not really sure how to set it up, but I'm here.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's odd. I would think if you just clicked on the video thing.
Yeah, I did, and the camera's on and the light is on, but I don't think anybody can see me.
No, we can't. Huh.
I don't know.
Yeah. You don't have like your hand up.
I don't.
Okay, yeah.
I really don't.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I just wanted to check in on you ladies since I can't see you. All right. Well, then let's move on to question 2 of the worksheet. And we'll go back to this view. All right, so that was 1. 2, following we have comparative balance sheets for Jones and an income statement. So we got a balance sheet there. Are those the years I gave you? I gotta change that. Make it a little more current. Let's make that 2019. And we'll make this one 2020. And then it'll be the income statement for 2020. And we have additional information, dividends paid of 50,000. And then we're to put together the statement of cash flow. So of course, we start with net income. So net income, remember, it's the same thing as earnings after taxes. So in fact, this one, let's go to our detailed solutions. Okay. And there we go. So the net income is 216,000. That came straight off the income statement for earnings after taxes. And then remember, now what's the first adjustment we're going to make to net income? Tyrone, it looks like you're having too much fun there. What's that first adjustment we're going to make to net income?
Add back the depreciation.
Add back the depreciation expense, exactly. Why? Because there was never any cash paid for depreciation, even though it was still subtracted on the income statement to eventually get the net income figure. We didn't pay any cash for it, so we're going to add it back in. So we add that 30,000 back in. Okay. And then, so that's going to be our first adjustment. Then we look at changes in current asset account balances other than cash itself. So if we go up to our current assets besides cash, well, accounts receivable went up from 60,000 to 75,000. That's an increase of $15,000. Remember from our little chart, an increase in assets decreases cash. So that $15,000 is subtracted out. Now, again, it's not really like we paid $15,000 in cash to increase our accounts receivable. What it really amounts to, is whatever we showed for sales on the income statement, if we go back up, we showed $1 million of sales on the income statement, but we didn't collect $1 million in cash during the year from sales because of the increase in accounts receivable. We would have collected 15,000 less than that million. We would have collected only 1,900,000, or I'm sorry, 985,000 instead of $1 million. Okay. Then we also have a change in another current asset. Inventory went up 10,000 from 90 to 100,000. Okay, so that's an increase of 10,000. Again, an increase in an asset decreases cash, so we subtract it out, and you could say, well, it means we paid for inventory, right? It also means that our net purchases exceeded the cost of goods sold we showed on the income statement by 10,000. They're showing cost of goods sold of 300,000, but because inventory increased by 10,000, we really had net purchases of 310,000. Finally, we have an increase in accounts payable, which is a current liability because that was it for current assets other than cash. So we go to current liabilities. The only one we have is accounts payable. That goes up 5,000. That's an increase in a liability, which increases cash. So it doesn't mean that we actually receive $5,000 of cash because of accounts payable. What it does mean is we already factored in between the cost of goods sold figure on the income statement of 300,000 and the adjustment for inventory of 10,000. We already factored in the total amount of purchases we had. But because of the increase in accounts payable, yeah, we had 310,000 in purchases, but because accounts payable went up 5,000, we actually only paid 305,000 in cash for those. So if you net out these adjustments, 30 minus 15 is 15, minus 10 is 5, plus another 5 is 10. Add that to the 216. Your net operating cash flows are $226,000. That is higher than net income. And remember, what we say? Operating cash flows typically will be higher than net income. Why? Because of the add back depreciation. The other things might go up or down and they might kind of offset each other, but you're always going to have the add back of depreciation. Okay, then we have investing activities, and remember, it's not the change in net plant and equipment, it's the change in gross fixed assets that we use. Gross fixed assets went from 500,000 to 700,000, so obviously we spent $200,000 in cash to buy fixed assets. So that's a negative 200,000 cash flow, and that's our net investing cash flows. Now, by the way, you might wonder, well, what if we borrowed the money to pay that 200,000? Well, that's fine. We would have shown the 200,000 we borrowed down here under financing activities as a positive, and then the 200,000 we paid for the fixed assets up here as a negative under investing. Okay, then for financing activities, we look at changes in interest-bearing liabilities. So looking at the balance sheet, the only interest-bearing liability we have is bonds payable. It went down from 100,000 to 90,000. If you decrease a liability, that decreases cash flows, so that gets subtracted out. And of course, obviously, it means we paid off $10,000 of bond. Or it could mean we issued 50,000 and paid off 60,000. Either way, the net effect is the same. It's a $10,000 decrease in cash. Finally, the last financing activity is that 50,000 paid out in dividends. Obviously, that's going to decrease cash by 50,000. So when you add that to the negative 10,000 from the decrease in bonds payable, your net financing cash flows are negative 60,000. Finally, if we combine the operating cash flows of a positive 226 with our investing cash flows of a negative 200 and our financing cash flows of a negative 60, that gives us net cash flows of negative 34,000. And we can always check to see if that number is correct by doing what? Looking at, well, did the balance of the cash account in fact go down by $34,000 from the beginning to the end of the year? And the answer is yes. 50,000 at the beginning of the year and 16,000 at the end of the year. Didn't I change that already? Oh, I didn't change it on here. Okay, change it on here too. So did I make it on the worksheet 2019 and 2020? Is that right? Okay, so again, we'll save that. So any questions on that statement of cash flows? No questions? Okay, we'll keep through here. All right. Next problem then, and I guess we may as well go with the detailed solution to it. We said assume Jones Corporation from that problem above is expecting sales to increase by $200,000 in, well, since that was supposed to be 2020, I'm going to change this to 2021, just so again, it's, we've got a little more current years here. Due to the fact that they are a retail chain, all assets vary directly with sales. So again, remember, your variable assets might be just accounts receivable and inventory. Those will almost always be considered variable assets. Those are going to generally go up if sales go up or down if sales go down. But for some companies, all assets will vary. And in this case, we're saying what's a retail chain. So in other words, as a retail chain, how do they grow sales? By opening more stores. If they open more stores, that gives them more assets. Okay. So all assets vary directly with sales. Accounts payable also varies directly with sales. If the profit margin and again, let's be consistent here, 2021 now is 15% and the dividend payout ratio is 60%, how much will Jones need in required new funds? So remember the formula. It says take A over S times the change in S. A is your variable asset. So in this case, we were told all assets are variable. That means, okay, at the end of 2020, we had 661,000 in total assets. Well, there's the total assets there. Okay, same thing. So that was our total assets. Sales for the year were 1 million. So you take those variable assets, which in this case just happens to be all assets, 661,000 over a million, multiply that by the increase, projected increase in sales of 200,000. That tells us, okay, assets equal 66.1% of our sales. So if sales go up 200,000, assets will go up by 66.1% of that amount, or $132,200. Now, of course, if assets go up $132,200, and we know assets equal liabilities plus stockholders' equity, then we have to have an equivalent increase in liabilities and stockholders' equity. Well, we know where some of that where at least some of the increase in liabilities is going to come from, because we're also told that accounts payable is a variable liability. So looking here, accounts payable at the end of the year was $55,000 on $1 million of sale. So that's 5.5% of our sales. So if sales go up 200,000, accounts payable is going to go up by 5.5% of that amount, or $11,000. Okay. And then finally, the last thing is the increase in stockholders' equity from the retained earnings account. Well, we were told the profit margin is going to be 15%. So we're going to multiply the 15, and remember, the profit margin is net income over sales. So if net income equals 15% of sales, okay, and then we multiply that by total projected sales. If sales were $1 million last year and they're going up 200,000 this year, then the 15% times total sales of 1.2 million would give us projected income. Then to get the increase in retained earnings, though, because not all of that income is going to be retained within the company, we then have to multiply that by 1 minus that dividend payout ratio, in this case of 60%. So if 60% of the earnings are being paid out in dividends, then 1 minus 60%, or 40% of those earnings are being retained in the company. So 15% of 1.2 million, 1,200,000 times 0.15. So projected net income is $180,000. But again, they're going to pay 60% of that out in dividends. So only 40% of that is going to be retained in the company and added to retained earnings, which of course, being a stockholders' equity account, increases stockholders' equity then by $72,000. Well, so when we take the increase in assets that results from our increase in sales, subtract out the increase in liabilities that results from the increase in sales, and subtract out the increase in retained earnings, that leaves us with required new funds of $49,200. So what that means is if everything happens the way this company plans, then they're going to have to get $49,200 of outside financing. Otherwise, their cash balance will have to decline. Okay? Questions on that problem? Any questions? No? All right. Well then, we got one last problem to go here. We have the following information for Dakota Corporation. We got sales of 500,000 one year, 600,000 the next year. So remember, on the test, I'll give you sales for this year and I'll tell you what sales for next year are. And everything else in this second column, you have to figure out yourself, okay? Now, the variable operating costs, well, since that was 100,000 when sales were 500,000, that means your operating costs equal 1/5 of your, oops, I guess I can't fit it in there without moving everything. But anyhow, your operating costs equal 1/5 or 20% of your sales, your variable operating costs. So if sales are 600,000, those variable operating costs will equal 20% of that amount, or 120,000. Okay. Now, fixed operating costs, remember, are unaffected by sales. They're not going to change just because our sales went up. They're going to stay at $200,000. Okay. So now we have 600 minus 120 in total variable costs, minus 200 in fixed costs, giving us earnings before interest and taxes of $280,000. Now, interest expense is also not a variable cost, doesn't just automatically go up because our sales go up. So we're going to assume that stays the same at $100,000. So when we subtract that from earnings before interest and taxes, that gives us earnings before taxes of $180,000. Okay, then the tax rate, that one I'll go ahead and put in here because I can do that. I've got plenty of room for that. The tax rate was obviously 40%. So given a 40% tax rate, there. 40% tax rate, 40% of 180,000 is 72,000. And so subtract that from the 180 in earnings before taxes. Your earnings after taxes or net income then is $108,000. Divide that by the number of shares outstanding of 100,000, and that gives you $1.08 in earnings per share. So before I go any further, any questions on how we got the numbers for column 2?
I don't know if it was just me, but my internet connection was unstable and you were frozen as we started this and you popped back in here.
Oh, really?
Toward
That happened to me too. Everybody went out.
Me too.
Oh, so
Yeah,
I've
it's
been
happened.
talking away and you guys didn't hear anything I said then. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I heard some of it, but not all of it.
Okay, so let me run through one more time. Let me run through the how we got those numbers. So again, the variable operating cost, since it was 100,000 when sales were 500,000, 100 over 500,000 is 20%. So sales are 600,000 and variable operating costs equal 20% of sales. They'll be $120,000. Fixed operating costs aren't going to change just because sales change, so they're going to stay up 200,000. Excuse me. So you subtract your total variable operating costs and fixed operating costs from your sales. That gives you earnings before interest and taxes of $280,000. Interest expense is unaffected, is not directly affected by change in sales. That's going to stay at 100,000. So earnings before taxes now is 180,000. Your tax rate's 40%. So on 180,000, that's 72,000 in taxes. Okay, and I'm trying to watch to make sure Langdon never moves. I can't tell. and I can see Kelly on my screen. I can see your eyes blinking, so I know. Okay, as long as I see your eyes blinking, I know you're not frozen. Okay, so take that earnings before taxes minus the taxes to get earnings after taxes of 108,000. Divide that by 100,000 shares outstanding. Earnings per share is $1. So does it make sense where we got the numbers in columns? Any questions on it? Okay, well then to determine the degrees of leverage, first of all, the degree of operating leverage, remember the formula for that says take the percentage change in EBIT divided by the percentage change in sales. So to get the percentage change in EBIT, and maybe I could actually add on a little bit here, take the change in EBIT. Well, EBIT went up from 200 to 280,000. That's a change of 80,000 divided by the original figure of 200,000 means you had a 80 over 200 means you had a 40% increase in sales. Then divide that by the percentage in, or I'm sorry, a 40% increase in EBIT. For the percentage increase in sales, take the increase of 100,000 divided by the 500,000 of sales we had to begin with. That's a 20% increase in sales. So if operating profit went up 40% due to a 20% increase in sales, then your degree of operating leverage is 2 times, which means what? It means for every 1% your sales went up, operating profit went up 2%. When sales went up 20%, operating profit went up to twice that rate, or 40%. Okay? Now, we do the same thing for the degree of financial leverage down here. We take the percentage change in earnings per share divided by the percentage change in operating profit. So earnings per share went from 60 cents up to $1.08. So that's a 48-cent increase in earnings per share on 60 cents to begin with. Okay, so now, so 48 over 60, well, what is that, 80%? That's an 80% increase in earnings per share. We're dividing that by the percentage increase in operating profit, which we already computed above. 80 over 200 is a 40% increase in operating profit, and that equals 2 times. So in other words, for every percent operating profit goes up, earnings per share will go up 2%. When operating profit went up 40%, earnings per share went up at twice that rate, or 80%. Okay. Now, for the, finally, for the degree of combined leverage, take the percentage change in earnings per share, which again is 80%, divide that by that percentage change in sales, which we already calculated previously as 20%. 80 over 20 gives you a degree of combined leverage of 4 times, meaning for every 1% change you had in sales, you had a 4% change in earnings per share. When sales went up 20%, earnings per share went up 4 times that rate, or 80%. And of course, remember that you can also compute the degree of combined leverage by simply multiplying the degree of operating leverage by the degree of financial leverage. So in this case, we'd say, well, when sales are going up, that works out pretty good for this company, because whatever percent your sales increase, looks like earnings per share are going to increase by 4 times that rate. Well, yeah, that's great if sales are going up. But realize if sales go down, for every percent drop you have in sales, you're going to have a 4% drop in earnings per share. So again, having a higher amount of leverage is going to make your earnings what? It's going to make them less stable and thus less predictable. Okay, questions. That's the worksheet. Any questions on any part of the worksheet then?
So the questions that we did in the homework, which are obviously pretty similar to this, is that also going to be pretty similar to what we see on the test?
Yeah, I tried to make the to assign homework problems that would be as similar as possible to what would be on the test, what we cover in class. Again, once in a while, the author of that ACCEPI homework does things just slightly different than the way we do, so we do occasionally run into that issue. But otherwise, yeah, it's very similar. Any other questions?
Now a question in Axevi homeworks. I ran on the problem to log in that account after I send you the email and back and forth. I just get in their website last night, so because I did part of that question, but it's almost past the due date. I don't know.
Yeah, it is past the due date. Finish get as much of it done as possible here, like by the end of this weekend, Ishmael. And I mean, at this point, I will have to, because I'll have to tack on a little bit of a leap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, last night I did like maybe less than half of those, but I didn't finish it yet.
Yeah. Go ahead, finish it, and we'll,
Okay.
I'm not sure. Is there a penalty that gets automatically tacked on the site? I'd have to double check.
Okay.
Because there might be an automatic penalty that gets tacked on. If not, I'll tack on, I don't know, a penalty, but it'll still be well worth your while to do it. It won't be, I'll make sure the penalty is not so severe that you're not getting half the points for it. I'll make sure you're getting, at least 3/4 of the points that you would have gotten if you turned it in on time. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And I know you did have trouble with the accessing the site, but probably should have tried accessing it before the day it was due.
I realized that in last Friday, so by like 2 times email, but I didn't get.
Yeah, that's yeah. Well, we won't ding you too bad this time.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, then I did want to cover some time value of money stuff tonight. So let me do this. Let me, and I got to make sure that, because I did make some changes on things, and I'm running out of paper to write on anymore. Okay, so I'm going to change the worksheet and worksheet solutions. I'll update those with the changes I made during class tonight. Okay, so, all right, then I'm going to minimize that, and that. Okay, now I want to go to the handouts. So now everything I talk about the rest of this evening is from chapter 9. It is not on tonight's test, test 1. This is all material for test 2. I won't get through all of chapter 9, but I would like to get through at least the first 1 or 2 handouts that I have on the time value of money. So, and one of the, I'll get to that later. Okay. So let me download this first one. All right, has anybody, I don't know, you guys probably haven't looked at this yet because, it's not on test 1, so I wouldn't guess most people have looked ahead to chapter 9 or looked at this handout yet. But if you did, great. If not, no biggie. But let's define some terminology when it comes to the time value of money. First of all, we'll talk about a present value. Present value is simply an amount that comes at the beginning of a time. Okay, it's an amount that comes at the beginning of a time period. And by the way, that doesn't always mean today. Like, let's say I gave you a problem where I said, I invested money 10 years ago, and I want to know how much I have today. Well, even though the money was invested 10 years ago, that was at the beginning of that 10-year time period. So it's a present value, even though it's not today. right? So present value is an amount that comes at the beginning of a time period. A future value is an amount that comes at the end of a time period. So again, if I said, well, I invested an amount 10 years ago, I want to know how much I have today. The future value is how much I have today, because that's the amount that comes at the end of that 10-year time. Okay? So that's all present value and future values. Present value comes at the beginning of a time period. And sometimes, by the way, that might even be years into the future that we're looking at a present value. You'll see an example of that later on. So present value just is an amount that comes at the beginning of a time period. A future value is an amount that comes at the end of a time period. Whatever that time period is, depends on the situation or problem you're looking at. Could be 10 years, 20 years, 1 year, 5 years, whatever. Now, an annuity is a series of equal payments over time. That could be a series of equal monthly payments. It could be quarterly, semi-annual, or annual payments. But just a series of equal payments over time, that's an annuity. Okay? Now, the present value of an annuity is the amount needed at the beginning of the time frame to receive the annuity, given a particular rate of interest and number of time periods. Okay. So it's how much you'd have to start with to be able to receive an annuity of X dollars over Y number of years, given interest rate Z, for example. The future value of an annuity is the amount an annuity will grow to at a particular rate of interest over a specified period. Okay. So an example on a present value of an annuity, let's say I know that I need to receive $5,000 a year for 20 years, and I can earn 8% as an annual rate of interest on my money. The present value of the annuity then would be however much I would have to have invested at an 8% annual rate to allow me to draw out. Did I say 1,000, 5,000? Whatever I said, $5,000 a year for the next 20 years. Future value of an annuity, then an example would be like, well, what if I invest $5,000 for 20 years at an 8% rate of interest? How much would I have at the end of that? Okay, so hopefully those terms kind of make some sense. Actually, I'm realizing I should probably, I don't want to do it that way. I want to indent this one without any others indenting. Could I go Shift Tab? Nope, that doesn't do it. Tab. Hey, that does it. And I'll do it here too. Control Tab. There we go. All right, I learned something new tonight. And I learned something new on my trip. I trailered my bike out. And here's what I learned. You do not try to load a trailer when it's not hooked to a vehicle. Why not? As me and my nephew and my niece were trying to push my bike up a ramp into the trailer started sliding forward because it wasn't hitched to the vehicle. And then because the bike is so heavy, it actually, the back end hit the ground while the front end went up in the air. So yeah, make sure if you're ever loading a trailer, you hitch it to the vehicle first. I figured that out. I've pulled trailers before, but I guess I never had to load them before without it being hooked up before. So anyhow, okay. So future value of a single amount. Here's some examples now. Assume you invest $1,000 at an annual interest rate of 10%. Further assume you want to know how much you would have in 3 years. See the work below. Okay. So if you took the $1,000 times 1 plus the 10% annual rate of interest you're earning on it, that tells you, okay, 1,000 times 1.10 gives you $1,100, which of course is the original $1,000 plus the $100 of interest that you earn at a 10% rate. Now, that means you're starting year 2 with $1,100. If that's earning a 10% rate, multiply that by 1.10, 1 plus 10% rate, you get $1,210, which of course equals the $1,100 you started the year with, plus the $110 of interest you earned on that $1,100. And after year 3, or for year 3, take the $1,210 you have at the end of year 2, multiply that by 1 plus the interest rate to get $1,331 by the end of year 3. That equals the $1,210 you started the year with, plus the $121 of interest you earned that year at a 10% rate on 12. Make sense? Okay. So alternatively, instead of doing it year by year, you could also get 1331 by using this equation. Take the present value, which is, again, that's the amount at the beginning of this 3-year time period, which was the $1,000 we invested. Multiply that by 1 plus the interest rate raised to the nth power. So in our example here, take 1,000 times 1 plus the 10% rate of interest raised to the 3rd power, you get 1331. Okay. Now, to do this on your calculator, first recall the rules of algebra. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I never heard that before, and a student told me that one when I was trying to explain the algebraic order in which you do functions in a formula. And a student said, yeah, it's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I said, what are you talking about? And it turns out, how many of you guys knew that? Okay, let me get you on here. I want to see. Yeah, raise your hands.
You existed.
I use it all the time when people, yeah, I use it all the time when people post those stupid things on Facebook where you got to figure out the math.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I hate those things because sometimes they'll be like, oh, yeah, but, you know, it'll be picture things and stuff.
Yeah.
And
And then you get,
oh, yeah, but you didn't see
really
this
tricky.
one that was sticking up over here. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, whatever. I hate those. Okay. So, yeah, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, which means you start with the P. Anything in parentheses you have to do first. It's like in the case of, in the parentheses here, add the 1 plus 10%. You do that first. That's the P. Next, do exponents. That's your E. So after that, you like in this formula, you would then raise that 1.10 to the 3rd power. Okay. Next, do multiplication. Multiply it by 1,000. Next, do division. Actually, division and multiplication, those two, it does not matter which order you use. And then, Aunt Sally, addition and subtraction would be the last 2 things that you do. So, as I explained below, on your calculator, you do the parentheses and get 1.10 using that previous example. Then do the exponent. So if you have the TI, Texas Instruments Business Analyst 2+ calculator, which I recommended for the class, what you would do on your calculator, and everybody just take a minute to just do this now, okay? Hit 1.10 and then hit the Y, look for the Y to the X button. It's right above the 9, right above number 9. Y to the X, then hit 3, and then hit equals. And you get 1.331, okay? And then, of course, you multiply that by the 1,000 to get 1331, same number we had. Okay? Now, you can get the same answer using the financial functions on the calculator. So everybody with your calculator, let's do this together. Enter the 1,000, first hit, do the 1,000, since that's what you're investing at the beginning of the 3 years, as a negative PV. So you put in the 1,000 in your calculator, and then if you notice, next to the equals button, you have a little plus minus sign. Hit that plus minus to make it a negative 1,000, and then hit PV. Okay. Now, why should it be? And I state here in this little handout, you're wondering why it should be entered as a negative, and it's basically because the calculator needs to know whether an amount was invested or paid out, which would be a negative, or received, which then would be a positive. Okay. Then enter 10 IY as the annual rate of interest, and then hit 3N for the number of years or time periods, and then finally hit compute, the upper left-hand corner button, FV for future value, and you should get a positive 1331. Did everybody get that?
Repeat the step after the IY.
After the IY, then you put in 3N for the number of time periods. 3N. N is third button down on the left column. Then hit compute in the upper left-hand column, FV, which is the right-hand column, third button down. Is it now working for you, Tyrone?
Yes, I'm doing good.
Ismail, you got it working? You
Yep,
got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Tyrone, did it work? No?
No.
It did not. Okay.
So let me start all the way. Let me start all the way from the beginning. So we
Okay.
got
Now
negative
here's-
1,000.
Maybe sometimes the computer is like, the calculator have to clean it out. So, in the beginning, give it a different numbers, and then you have to do again.
Yeah. By the way, if you would have put in that 1,000 at the beginning as a positive number, you'd still get the same answer. The only difference is the 1331 would show up as a negative. Okay. So, tell me if you're getting it this time, Tyrone.
All right. So I'm at the negative 1,000. Then
And you hit PV, right, to make that your
PV.
present value. Yep.
then 10 IY.
10 IY,
All right.
and then 3N,
3N.
and then
Then
compute
compute FV.
FV.
Okay. Now I'm there.
You got
Now I got it.
1331? Yes.
Yep.
All right. Good deal. Okay. So that now you guys just found the future value of an investment right there. Okay. All right. Now let's find the present value of a single amount. So now let's assume instead of assuming you have 1,000 and invest it for 3 years, let's assume you need to have $1,000 at the end of 3 years. And again, I'm just in this example, sticking with a 10% rate all the way through because it's an easy number for people to work with. And you want to know how much you'd have to invest to have 1,000 in 3 years, given a 10% rate. So mathematically, a present value is just the inverse of a future value. So the formula for a future value, remember, was take the present value times 1 plus I raised to the nth number of time periods. The present value is just going to be the future value times 1 divided by 1 plus I to the n. So in this example, to find the present value mathematically, we first do the parentheses, 1 plus 10% to get 1.10. Then again, we got to do the exponent. So hit the y to the x button and 3 to get 1.10 raised to the third power, which again is 1.331. You could then clear the calculator and enter 1 divided by 1.331 and then multiply that number by that future value of 1,000. Remember, the thousand's a future value now, because in this case, we're saying the $1,000 comes at the end of the 3 years. The result is $751.31 to the nearest penny. Let me put my dollars. There. Okay. That represents the amount that would need to be invested at 10% annual rate for 3 years to have $1,000 at the end of the year. Okay. Now, alternatively, you could use the financial calculator to find the present value, enter the 1,000, since this is coming at the end of the 3 years, as a future value. Now, one thing too, I should point out to people, let me download something else. Let me download time value handouts, your financial calculator handout. Here's a financial calculator handout here. So I mentioned, first of all, the calculator comes preset with the factory setting to only go out 2 places past the decimal, okay? But that's not far enough. Why? Because, like, let's say an answer was 9.41%, but you were doing it in decimal form. You'd get 0.0941. Well, since it's only, calculator only goes out 2 decimal places, it would just have 0.09. So on a test, I've had students enter like 9% when the exact answer was like 9.41%, right? So because of that, you know, I tell everybody, set your calculator to 4 places past the decimal, 4 places for the decimal. So the way you do that, you hit the second function, which is the that yellow button right there, and then format, which is the second function of the decimal key down here, and then in your display it'll say DEC decimal equals, and if it's still at the factory setting it'll say 2. So then just hit 4 and then hit your enter button right here. Okay. And then if you hit the clear button after that, now you notice you got 4 decimals in your display instead of. Here's another big one. Okay. Clearing the calculator. What sometimes happens is if you don't clear the calculator after you finished one time value problem, before you start a new time value problem, it will store the numbers from the previous problem in the register of the calculator, and those numbers will combine with the new numbers and can give you inaccurate answers. So I want to make sure you also know how to clear the calculator. So click on second again, right there. Okay, and then clear time value of money, which is the second function of the FV key, which is the third key down in the right-hand column. By the way, I have found that some people thought that the labels went below the keys, so they were hitting the wrong key, and they're like, no, I keep clearing the calculator and it's not working, I'm not getting your answer. And I went over and tried it. I said, well, I got it. And they said, how did you clear it again? And I showed them. And then I discovered that instead of hitting the third button down, they were hitting the second button down, the button above the clear time value money instead of the button below the label clear time value money. So anyhow, second clear time value money, and then second clear work, which is just the clear button. Okay, so do that. This other thing you won't need to worry about probably unless you start getting wacky answers, okay, for the payments per year. You want to make sure that's one. So if you're ever getting wacky answers and you're certain you have done properly cleared your calculator, then you know, whoops, oh, okay, that was right. Okay. Anyhow, so if you're getting wacky numbers and you're certain you've tried it multiple times, clearing the calculator, you're sure you're clearing it right, you're still getting wrong numbers, it could be you have your payments per year set to something other than one. Let me say this, on the test, I'm always going to assume annual payments, always. I'm going to show you, now Accepi doesn't do that in the Accepi homework, and I am going to show you how to do like monthly payments or something like that rather than annual payments. So I'll show you how to do it, but on the test, you're only going to have annual payments, just so you know. Okay, but for now, make sure your time value calculator or the time value function is cleared on the calculator following these steps. And you need to do that every time before you start a brand new problem, okay? So, getting back to this, so alternatively, we could put the 1,000, now that we cleared it, put 1,000 in as a future value. You can enter it as a positive number because you would assume you're receiving it at the end of year 3. Then enter 10 IY, because again, we're assuming a 10% annual rate of interest just for simplicity. And then 3N for the number of time periods. And then finally hit compute PV. And you're going to see $751.31 is what you should get as the present value there. And I show you down below, well, yeah, if I took that times 1 plus a 10% rate, after 1 year, I'd have 826.44. Take that times 1 plus 10%. By the end of year 2, I'd have $909.09. Take that times 1 plus 10%. By the end of year 3, I'd have $1,000. So, any questions on finding the present value of a single amount?
In this case, it's coming negative if that's okay. Or
oh yeah, yep, it does. I don't know if you guys can see that on my display.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get that.
Does it?
Yep.
This looks like a mirror, doesn't it? It's like a mirror. It's backwards, isn't it? Right? Or no?
Yeah.
Anyhow, that should say negative 751 or whatever. Yeah, negative 751.30.
Still do not have 4 decimal places. I mean, backing up another topic, but I follow those instructions and it's not doing that for me. It reverts
Kelly,
back to 2.
Okay, yours is still at 2 decimal places?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, I know what you did then. Okay. After you, going back to the calculator handout here, financial calculator handout. Okay. So here's what you did. Let me clear mine out. Okay. You did second and you hit format and then you put 4 and you hit enter. And then did you go right into your thing then?
Non-conference.
What do you mean, go right in?
Well, wait a minute. Okay. After you hit enter, Did you, what, so you did this, you hit second and then format, which is the decimal key down here.
Okay.
And it says DEC equals, and you hit 4 and then enter, right?
Yep, second format. This is before I hit 4, so then I'll hit 4.
Enter.
Enter.
And then just hit your clear button.
Down here.
Yep. Yep, the regular clear button. Hit it a couple times if you need to. It should be showing 4 decimals in there.
Still at 2.
It's still at 2. Okay, you hit second. And format is the decimal key at the very bottom row.
Yep. Second.
Oh, it isn't showing D.
Format.
Okay, yep. And what now yours is saying decimal equals 2. So now turn around, hit 4, and now hit enter, which is like up here. It's not the equal sign. There's an enter key on the top row. Did you think it was the equal sign?
I've been hitting equals
yeah,
for 5 minutes.
Because I know on some calculators that's your enter key. Yeah, the enter key on this one is up here at the top.
Okay, so does it say enter?
Yep, there's enter right on it. Top key, top row, second from the left.
Oh.
You got it.
Okay.
Now just hit clear, and it should show your four decimals like that.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Hardest part
All
of
right.
class all
The
night.
small victories are always awesome. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's see. Go back to here now. Any other questions though about this finding a present value of a single amount? Okay, well then let's talk about an annuity. So what we'll do yet tonight, I'll do the future value of an annuity and then the present value of an annuity. And then next time we'll move into other stuff, okay? But the future value of an annuity then, that tells you how much an amount invested each year would grow to at the end of a particular time frame. So up here, assume you invest $1,000 at the end of each of the next 3 years at an annual interest rate of 10%. You want to know how much you'd have at the end of year 3. So of course, realize the first 1,000 is only going to earn 2 years of interest. Why? Because with the annuity, typically we assume what's called an ordinary annuity. With an ordinary annuity, what that means is the payments come at the end of each year instead of at the beginning. Okay. So if your first amount is invested at the end of year 1, well, by the end of year 2, it's earned 1 year of interest, and by the end of year 3, it's earned only 2 years of interest. Okay, and then the amount invested, so 1,000 times 1 plus your 10% interest rate raised to the second power because it's earning 2 years of interest tells you, okay, that amount, that first investment will grow to 1,210. The second 1,000 will earn 1 year of interest because if it's invested at the end of year 2. By the end of year 3, it's earned 1 year of interest at a 10% rate. So 1.1 to the first power for 1 year of interest times 1,000 means that investment will grow to 1,100. The last $1,000 earns no interest by the end of year 3 because it's only invested at the end of year 3. By the way, you could still follow the same format we've been following here. Take 1 plus 10% raised to the power of 0, because remember, any number raised to the power of 0 equals 1. Always. Doesn't matter what the number is. Any number raised to the power of 0 equals 1. So 1,000 times 1 means that 1,000 invested at the end of year 3 is only going to be worth 1,000 at the end of year 3 because obviously, you know, it hasn't earned any interest. So add the numbers up. You get 1,210 is what the first 1,000 would grow to, 1,100 the next 1,000, and then the 1,000 invested at the end of year 3. You'd have a total of $3,310 at the end of year 3. Now, alternatively, you could use the financial functions on your calculator. So again, let's clear out the calculator. Go second, clear time value of money. Second, clear work, and then hit clear again. Okay? Now, put in 1,000, hit the plus minus to make it a negative, and hit payment key. Okay, because you're investing 1,000 or paying it out each year. That's why we make it a negative. It doesn't matter really. If we made it a positive, it just means our final answer would come out. Enter 10 IY because that's what we're assuming is the annual rate of interest. And 3N for the number of time periods. Finally hit compute, future value, and you should get $3,310. Same thing we got up there. Okay. So, any questions on finding the future value of an annuity?
I got 43. I don't know, that is something wrong maybe.
You got what, Ismail?
43. Okay, let me do one more time.
Yeah, make sure you clear out your time value register. So again, second, clear time value money. Second, clear work, clear again, and then try it again. But 1,000 payment. MIY 3N compute FV 310. Did you get 3310 this time, Ishmael?
Just give me 4310. I don't know what's
40. Oh, 4310. Okay, that sounds like you're using 4 years instead of 3 years, maybe.
Okay. Okay, let me do one more.
If I do the same thing, let me just hit 4 and compute future value. No, that's not right.
Yeah.
You're getting an extra 1,000 in there. Trying to figure out why you're getting that. What you're doing.
1,000 negative.
Oh, yeah, and payment.
Payment 10 IY and 3N compute future value.
Future value.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
4310, huh?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Hit your PV button and see if you have. Oh, nope, that's what you're already finding. So trying to think. I wonder if you're in beginning mode instead of ending mode. You look in your display in real tiny letters up there. Does it say BGN?
BGN. Oh, yeah, I see it either under the top of a.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I see that.
Is it in your display up here, like up here in this part, Ishmael?
No, yeah, I see.
Oh, as long as you don't see BGN there, then that's not the issue. I would say try to clear the calculator again. And second, and remember the clear time value money is the third button down on the right-hand column.
Okay, second TV 1,000 negative.
Third button down on the right-hand column.
10 YY 3. Compute feature value. Yeah, this size.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay, so I think somehow something didn't get cleared properly previously.
Yeah, actually, maybe
That's typically what it is almost every time if you're not getting the right answer, it's a person didn't go through all the steps to clear the calculator.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. So you got it now. All right, finally, any other questions from anybody? Okay, well, finally, let's do the present value of an annuity. And I think, yeah, that's the end of this first worksheet. And then maybe I'll go back to the calculator handout just briefly. Present value of an annuity. So assume now we want to receive $1,000 at the end of each of the next 3 years. We can earn an annual rate of interest again at 10%. We want to know how much we'd have to invest today in order to receive the annual payments of $1,000. So of course, first of all, the amount you'd need to receive $1,000 in 1 year is $909.09, because remember, we could just take 1,000 times 1 divided by 1 plus the 10% interest rate raised to the first power to get to 1,000 we need in year 1. Then to figure out how much we'd have to invest to have $1,000 in year 2, that's $826.45. We could find that by taking the $1,000 we want in 2 years and multiply that by 1 divided by 1 plus 10% raised to the second power. That 1,000 is in 2 years. The third 1,000 that we'll receive at the end of year 3, present value of that's going to be $751.31. Again, just take the 1,000 times 1 divided by 1 plus 10% raised to the third power. Add those all up, $909.09, $826.45, $751.31. You're going to get $2,486.85 as the present value of that today. Alternatively, again, just use the financial functions of the calculator. So everybody, right now, want everybody together to clear out the time value register. Second, clear time value money, third button down in the right-hand column. Second, clear work, and then hit clear again. Now everything's cleared from your previous calculation. So now put in 1,000 payment. Now we're going to enter it as a positive this time, but why? Because we said rather than paying it out, we're receiving it each year. Okay. Then enter 10 IY for the annual interest rate. And again, we're going to hit 3N for the number of time periods. Finally, hit compute PV for the present value of that annuity. And $2,486.85 is the amount you should get. It does show up as a negative number because you know, that's the amount we would have to invest or pay out today to be able to receive the $1,000 each of the next 3 years. Okay. Did everybody get the $2,486.85? Anybody not get that? Oops, I can't quite see, Kelly, what yours says. Yep, you got it. Awesome. Okay, everybody else get that same number? Okay, Laura, Tom, you're good. All right, Langdon, Tyrone, Ishmael, did you get it? Did it work? Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted. Ishmael. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's on mute. I didn't let that.
You didn't get the 2,486.
No, it's okay. I got it.
You did get it?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. And Tracy and Michelle and Kelly. Oh, Kelly, you got it. You showed me. Tracy and Michelle, you got it?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, great. So, okay, the only other thing I'll do is maybe take a quick look back at the financial calculator handout right here. By the way, finding the price of a bond, that's a chapter 10 thing that we're going to do, so don't worry about that for now. Finding the yield on a bond, that's chapter 10. Finding the present value of growing or changing cash flows, that's also all chapter 10 stuff. Internal rate of return, net present value. All of those other things on the calculator handout are for chapter 10. And we're not done with chapter 9 yet. The only other thing is, again, maybe let's go ahead and look at making sure that everybody's payments per year is set to 1. So I'm going to clear out my time value register again. Second, clear time value money. Second, clear work. And then clear again. Every time. These 3 steps. Okay. Now click second and then PY, which is the second function of the IY button. Okay. And it should say 1. If it does not, hit 1 and then hit enter. And then go ahead, hit your clear button down here. Actually, you have to hit the clear button twice to keep it at 1 payment per year. Okay. So is everybody set for 1 payment per year? I think that's what it's automatically set to on the factory settings. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. Again, I will look next time at doing things other than annually, but for now, we'll just do things annually. And then, and like I say, on the test, you're only going to have to do things annually. So you won't have to constantly be trying to figure out, you know, and, okay, so any questions? No questions? Okay. Well then, good luck on the test. Again, I'm gonna pull the problems and get those straightened out and put back on there. The problem section of the test should be available at least by tomorrow morning. And the multiple choice is available to you right now. So you could take that right now if you wanted to. Just remember, I think I have it set to a 90-minute time limit on the multiple choice.
How many are there?
It should be plenty. Yes, Laura?
How many are there?
25 questions.
Okay. And then,
So,
you know that worksheet you did the detailed solutions on?
huh?
The worksheet you did the detailed selections on? Can you save
Right.
that out there? Because the one that's out there right now doesn't have like the ratios and all that you did.
Oh, yeah. So the changes what we did tonight.
Yeah, can you
mean,
save that out there?
Yep, I'll make sure all that right as soon as we get done. I'll make sure I update all of those handouts that we did tonight with the new stuff. Yep.
Okay.
Hey, any other questions from anyone? All right, well, good luck on your tests, and I know it's going to be a short time till we see each other again. Have a good weekend, and I will see you again on Monday. All right, take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So Bob, I have a question for you. I didn't want to.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the way you're doing this test now, I'm actually leaving tomorrow at noon. I'm going to be gone all weekend. How long are you going to leave the second half of this open and available?
Well, you know what? It'll probably be available yet tonight because I'm going to do it right now. First thing I'm going to do after we end this meeting is I'm going to put the handouts as I modified them and changed them here. I'm gonna put those on Brightspace. Then I'm gonna get to work on the test. So it may take an hour. I'm guessing by 8:30, 9 o'clock tonight, the problems will be ready. So you could either do them later tonight, 8:30. You know, I'll make them available as soon as I get it all done. So say by 9 o'clock tonight, the problems will be ready. Multiple choice you can do now. Problems you can do anytime after 9 o'clock tonight. So.
Okay. I just know that it was going to be tomorrow morning. There's no way I'd get it done.
Yeah, nope, I understand. Nope, I'll have it ready by 9 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you betcha.
Have a
All
good
right.
weekend.
Take care.